Hey there guys, it's Carly and welcome to today's video. Once again, I'm putting on my Miss Morton teacher hat and today we're going to talk about how do you get organized and set up for an assessment task and make sure that you're completing all parts of the task and doing things sort of to get you the best mark. So what you're gonna need is your actual assessment notification. So hopefully your teacher should have given you a hard copy of what the assessment task is. If they've sent it to you online, maybe see if you can print it out. The second thing is a piece of A4 or preferably A3 blank paper, some highlighters and some pens. So go and grab those things and then come back and get ready to smash out your assessment task. Okay, the first step is to annotate the task. This is why you need the hard copy. So what I mean by annotate is I actually want you to physically write on the assessment notification. So with your highlighters, be highlighting the due date and any sort of key words or key aspects to the task. And with your pens, I want you to be circling any words that you don't know the meaning of and either ask your teacher or use the internet to find some definitions. What you should also be doing with the task is looking at the marking criteria. So they're the dot points that the teacher is going to be marking you on. Do each of those dot points make sense? And do you know what each of them means in order for you to get a certain mark? So particularly look at the A range because, you know, we want to have some high expectations. So what specifically do you need to do to get an A? And for instance, you'll find, well, at least with English anyway, a lot of the marking criterias for English will have a dot point that says uses language and structure specific for audience, purpose, and something else. And you just sort of look at it and think, what does that even mean? But breaking it down, what that dot point actually means, and you'll see it come up in a lot of exams as well, is do you have good structure? Do you have clear paragraphs? Do your sentences make sense? Do they flow? Are you using, correct spelling, punctuation, and grammar? And are you using sophisticated vocabulary? So that's sort of the mechanics and the basics of what you've written. Does it flow well and does it sound good is the basic version of what that dot point means. But sometimes you look at a dot point and you're just not quite sure. So maybe while you're in class, actually ask the teacher to break down each of the dot points and start making some notes next to them. Also be making notes about any information that the teacher gives you in class, specifically what they're looking for, key words that you need to mention. If they give you a scaffolded structure of how to set it out, make sure you write all of these things on the actual assessment task notification. So that is your first step. Your second step is all about organization. So once you've annotated your marking sheet and the assessment notification, the next thing is to put it on your calendar. So hopefully you've got some sort of wall planner or calendar up at home that you can write it on. Maybe you've got a diary with all your school information. Now, I don't want you to just put the due date of the task on the calendar, but I also want you to put down a date that you would like to get in a draft for your teacher. And I would recommend no less than a week before the task is due. Another thing that you could do is specifically block out afternoons when you are going to work on the task and what part of the task you hope to tackle at that point. Step number 3 is to break the task down, and this is where your blank sheet of paper comes in. So if you have got a creative assessment task, something like a narrative or poetry, maybe it might be good to do something a little bit visual and use your blank sheet of paper to create a little bit of a brainstorm. So say that your topic is on change and you need to write a piece of creative writing on change. Have change in the middle and think about all the things around the outside that inspire you. What could be the setting, the plot, the characters, the moral, the techniques you'd like to use, both language and structural. So brainstorms are good if it's more of a creative task, or even if it's a science experiment that you need to come up with, something where you can sort of just dump all your kind of cool ideas. But if it's more of an analytical task like an essay or a report, instead use that piece of paper to jot down what each of your paragraphs could be about. So I love doing a paragraph plan, especially for essays, and I kind of write down what's the theme of my paragraph, what's you know, the technique and examples that I'm going to use, and it's kind of like a little bit of a scaffold. It gives me a clear direction before I even start writing, so that when I do sit down, I know where I'm going with things, and I've kind of already got things planned out and set in my mind. So yeah, it's not as confusing, and if you just sit down and you start writing and you don't have a direction, it's probably not going to go anywhere, and it might not even make sense. So step number 4 is to chunk it out. Now that you've got like a little bit of a plan and you've got the key dates in your diary, actually specifically set aside time to work on a piece. Now, I find that if I say that I'm going to sit down for an hour or 2 hours and work on an assessment task, 1, I'm not really happy about that thought. That's a lot of time. And 2, I find that I'm not using that time effectively. So specifically set out even just 20 minutes to half an hour, keep it nice short bursts, and think, what is the goal that I would like to achieve by this end period of time? And I used to make it just a paragraph a day or a paragraph per designated section of time. So if you've already got your paragraph plan, it's going to make it super easy for you to say, all right, today I'm sitting down, I'm spending half an hour at 4 o'clock and I'm going to work on this paragraph. So it really just sets clear goals for you. It makes sure that you're slowly chipping away at the task, you're focused, you are, you know, diligent in getting it done, but also it's not going to be overwhelming burden, and you're not going to rush it at the last minute, which please do not do. Step number 5. So once you've chunked it out and you've pretty well finished the task, it's time for a self-edit. Teachers hate nothing more than receiving a draft that you can absolutely tell the person has not read themselves. So read it over, and I would actually suggest reading it out loud. When you read it in your mind, you don't notice so much where full stops and commas are meant to go. You can't really hear the punctuation, and sometimes you can't hear whether a word or a sentence fully makes sense. So read your draft at least once or twice out loud and do some self-editing. Look for things like your spelling, your punctuation, your grammar. Make sure that it addresses the question and the marking criteria. And then once you are happy with your first draft, it's time for step 6, which is to send it to your teacher for feedback. Now, I did recommend at the start of this video that you should definitely send your draft in at least a week before it is due. That gives the teacher enough time to receive it, read it, and give you feedback. So once the teacher has given you feedback, it's time for step 7, which is for you to actually implement the feedback. I cannot tell you the amount of times that I have given up my time to read someone's draft and to specifically give them feedback to help them elevate the quality of their work, and then the thing that they submit does not include any of the feedback I've given them, or they haven't even bothered to delete the feedback from the actual task, and my writing is written in there. This recently happened with a Year 12 student. So honestly, if you are not taking the time to implement teacher feedback and then delete the teacher's comments, maybe you deserve a bad mark, because that is a rookie error, real rookie. The second part of step 7 is I would suggest to resubmit, because chances are when you submit to your teacher or someone for feedback the first time, they're maybe not giving you absolutely every single thing that you need to do. I know for myself, if I told some of my students absolutely every single thing that they need to do, they would be overwhelmed. So I kind of just give them the main points of feedback, and it's when that they resubmit a second time that we're able to really get to the nitty-gritty stuff. So if you can and if you have time, I would definitely suggest resubmitting. It certainly helps to improve. Like every time you submit, every time you get someone else to read over it, you're just finding new things. It might be vocabulary, it might be ways to deepen your analysis, and that just really helps to improve the quality of your writing. Step number 8 is to make sure that you submit on time. So if it is due at 9 o'clock on Monday, I would strongly suggest that you submit or upload on the weekend, whether that's Sunday night or whatever. You just never know if technology is going to fail you, and you might actually find that you have trouble submitting and that you need to find a different route, like whether that is emailing your teacher or printing off a hard copy. You really just need to anticipate that something is going to go wrong and making sure that you're preparing for that beforehand. And my final tip, which is step 9, is to make sure you reflect. So once you actually get the marked assessment task back, please don't just look at the number. Oh, it's an 18 out of 20. I did good or I did bad, and then just chuck it in the recycle. Actually think, what did I do well? What do I need to improve on? Actually ask the teacher or whoever marked it, what advice or tips can you give me to be better at this next time? It's about having that growth mindset and continually reflecting and learning and growing. Think about, did you adhere to the task? Did you adhere to the marking criteria? What are your goals for the next assessment task? What sort of like specific aspects do you want to improve on? So yeah, having that growth mindset and continually reflecting. So those are my 9 steps to help you plan your assessment task and to, you know, continually grow in your work. It's about organization, but it's also about having the motivation to actually do some of these things. You might not like the subject that you're completing this assessment task for. You might think that it is irrelevant and that you're not going to use it once you leave school. But you know what? At the end of the day, those things don't matter. It's about continually being a learner and challenging yourself to try new things and to continually improve. So try and have a positive mindset when it comes to assessment tasks. I know that no one really likes doing them, but yeah, it's about learning and growing and continually reflecting on your practice. I mean, even as a teacher, I'm constantly doing these things. And if I wasn't, I would never be learning and growing as a teacher. And I'm sure that you would certainly be able to see that in the way I show up to class. I hope this was helpful for you. If it is, maybe give it a thumbs up and comment down below what are some of your strategies that you like to do to be organized and prepared for an assessment task. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye guys.